Hi, I'm Donnalea Van Vleet Geltz, and I'm Executive Director of Continuum Movement. That's one of my jobs. There's actually quite a few more. I am a researcher, and I am what I would call a movement lover. And one of my goals in this life is to really bring more consciousness into this world about the importance of movement,
Mm.
the importance of movement with consciousness. And so I am especially honored and very thrilled to bring a person that I think has made such a shift of understanding in this world about this. Um, and I also love that I call him one of my dear friends. So Ian Macnaughton is here today. He has a PhD in human science and is a registered clinical counselor in Vancouver, British Columbia. He maintains a private practice working with individuals, families, and family businesses. He has spent the last 50 years studying and teaching in the area of somatic psychology. Ian is the author of Body, Breath, and Consciousness, a somatic anthology, which, by the way, Ian, I think I've shared with you, was my primer in grad school for somatic psychology.
Oh,
I,
how
I met
lovely.
Ian first through his book, you guys. So, and I just loved it. I highly recommend it for everyone. He's also contributed and written for numerous other publications in the field of somatic and family systems, organizational development, family businesses, and contemplative education. He has studied and taught extensively as a body dynamic analyst, family systems, and the area of trauma resolution. Ian is also has also taught for business schools like the University of British Columbia, Simon Fraser University, Goelz College, and the British Columbia Institute of Technology. Ian brings an extensive background to both the field of somatics and family businesses. He has owned a number of businesses in Canada and the USA and has held many leadership positions both in the fields of psychotherapy as well as business. Ian is known as a therapist for therapists. That I He actually has been my therapist. I really he has got me out and made me conscious of so many things. I am eternally grateful to you, Ian, for
Mm.
your help
Well,
in this.
well, thank you.
But here's the other thing, you guys. He is currently on the teaching faculty for Dr. Peter Levine's Legacy Faculty, which is quite an honor, you guys, and the Ergos Institute of Somatic Education. So, Ian, thank you for joining me today in this discussion of the importance of somatics. And also, we're going to talk about where somatics and something like continuum movement converge.
Mm.
So, what would you like to say today to us?
Well, first of all, just thank you so much, Donnalea, for this opportunity to connect with you and the audience and to be able to talk back and forth about our practices and how they're different and how they're very much in sync. And I just love how you bring in movement. And that's something that is a leading edge for me to learn more about in terms of um, the fluidity. I'm always working with the fluidity of the body, of course, and uh, your work it really takes it to a whole other level in terms of the silent language, because I believe that it's in the silent language that we really find our true knowing. And my work is all about helping people discover what is their true knowing. What what is their awareness of their source, their instinctual source of vitality that informs everything, including the impulse to move. And that of course, there's you so well know can be enhanced, developed, uh, become more conscious of the impulse to move, and to be able to refine it in very discrete ways. And I think you said it well that those discrete awarenesses are actually about expanding consciousness. Uh, they're not just about oh, I've learned more about my body and I found some impulses to move in a certain way, and then somehow organically I wanted to pause. It's about expanding consciousness as human beings so that we can make a better contribution to the gift of life in ourselves and what we can bring to our clients, our families, if we ourselves are more present, if we're more with ourselves in a good way, and the capacity to from that to be attuned to the other person in a way that helps them become more of who they truly are, their true self.
We have talked before about this and how the deep connection between understanding and getting in touch with oneself. How can you really relate to another person unless you've connected first to yourself, is what I say.
Yeah,
And continual movement so helps us to really go inside, feel our body, connect to ourself. We don't work very much in this culture up to connect. We only almost always try to connect out, and I don't think it works connecting out until you're
no.
connected within.
Hmm. Well, when we lose that resonance and balance where we're, Donnalea, as you so well know, when we kind of overjoin to get to use another person's presence to feel safe, right? And of course, originally as the baby, that was very functional because that's the that we need that source, right, to self-regulate ourselves. And of course, as adults, as we both know, uh, if we're if we're really present in ourselves, we can sense the other person, in such a fundamental way. I had an acupuncture session this morning from a medical doctor, and he said, Ian, um, you had a block in a certain acupuncture point. He said, I could feel it in my body, so I helped you move it. Because he said, that's how I kind of know, not only from the pulses, you know, but I sense it in my body, right? And I know that you do that kind of capacity in yourself to be resonant enough with yourself that you can actually attune what's accurately what's happening in the other person, right? And the other person feels connected and seen and joined into life in a balanced way where um, they don't have to lose themselves to connect with me, and they don't have to merge with me. At the same time, they don't have to be too far away for safety. And I think our work very much is about helping people find within their capacity to self-regulate and to know how to be safe in the world and with each other. And when do they that contact withdrawal rhythm where they need to be able to more settle in themselves in uh, even in exquisite moments so that they had the impulse to come back out again. And I wonder, could you say something about how you work with that in Continuum?
Well, in Continuum, we use breath and sound and movement,
Hmm.
and we also that's three parts of our essential elements. The fourth part is sensation. So we attune to our inner sensations as well
Hmm.
as doing our breath while we're doing breath, sound, and movement,
Hmm.
and that sets up a resonance inside. This, I think, especially the sound and breath really helps resonate.
Hmm.
And I happen to know you're good friends with a good friend of mine of Stephen Porges and the
Hmm.
polyvagal, and he is so emphasizing these days the need for safety, safety for change,
Yes,
safety for
yes,
healing, uh,
yes.
and if, for with Continuum, especially if you talk about the ventral vagal system,
Hmm.
it's here in the facial area, and it's
Yeah.
cranium nerves 5, 7, 9, 10, and 11.
Hmm.
And in Continuum, we are doing a lot of breaths and a lot of face movements.
Hmm.
We actually have a lot of fun. It can be, all kinds of squinchy face things, but having fluidity and having
Hmm.
these there's these nerves alive and regulated and attuned is really essential.
That's so lovely because, of course, my work, I fundamental for me is the life force, as you are working with, and the translator for appreciating life force is a felt sense of some kind of continuum energy. And how do we translate? How do we become aware of that in terms of a language? Is sensation, and that from that sensation comes the felt sense and the impulse and the movement. So I think of that vertically and horizontally, left and right brain and the triune brain. And so one of the things that I was excited about when you were talking is I also use sound in my work, as Peter Levine does, and a lot of movement of the face, and we use a kind of a voo sound just to regulate the vagus, and then a voo ra as a way of undoing the holding in the masseter muscle and the shoulders and the diaphragm, the sort of either over or under will action, characterological development. And so a funny story. So I was doing a Zoom session with a client, and actually a medical doctor, and he has some PTSD for sure. And so we were doing the VU together, and then we did the VU raw. And of course, I was, and a little more exaggerated than that. I'm not going to do it here. And he started to laugh and laugh, and he said, I just wanted to take a screenshot and put it up on YouTube. I said, well, I'd get a lot of followers, I think, but maybe not the ones I want. So it's interesting how you work with organic sound. And sometimes I work with sound that opens up the chakras, right? Can you say a little bit more about sound and how you work with it?
Well, we have such a wide
Mm,
variety of sound. Someone asked me how many breaths are there. Well, I
mm.
have no
Oh,
idea. And
no.
continuum there, and I made a promise when Emily asked me to steward Continuum forward. I made a
Mm,
promise to her that it would keep innovating, it would keep changing, because it, an alive process is always still moving and alive and changing. So we don't live in the past. I certainly honor and
yeah.
deeply love Emily to this day, but living in the past would not be honoring her, and rigifying continual movement would
Hmm.
not be
Hmm.
honoring her.
Hmm.
But what I would say, what I would love, Ian, is because we know how fun it is to do these breath sounds, would you be willing to share with us? And can we have it on tape? And you doing VU, what I think
I,
it would be delightful.
oh, you would. I'm a little shy right now, but nevertheless, let's go for it. That's a
Let's
good.
go for it.
It's
Ian's gonna
always
edit it out.
yeah. So what I thought is you and I could do it. All right. So the idea is it's much like the traditions from yoga and Tibetan work, and so it's a VOO, but VOOO, which Dr. Vleet developed as a way to not have a long chant. It has a rhythm, but it's for uh, bringing the vagus, um, posterior vagus, the old vagus branch, out of the degree of shutdown and freeze in into the social engagement. So the sound goes like this. I'll demonstrate it once, okay? So the idea is you have your feet on the ground, you feel your pelvic floor, the root chakra, and you kind of maybe even rotate a little bit on your sit bones, very slightly, which will bring in the center below the navel, right? Okay. And then you take some air into your abdomen. It's not like having to, you know, force it. It's just you take some air in your abdomen, a little bit more than you usually do, and then we'll do the VU together. How's that? Okay. And then and then of course noticing you took a little breath, and just to notice what experience you have.
What I would say is, first of all, it's very pleasurable, so that's really nice. And I could feel the relaxation of the dorsal vagal, it's below the subdiaphragmic
Yep.
area. It just went. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah.
It went from here to,
Yeah.
it's like.
That's lovely. That's lovely because you're such an artist about movement that of course you would do that. Right? Right? Yeah, because it is all about movement, right? So, so let's do the VU raw, okay? And the idea of that is you're starting with the VU for the reasons we talked about, and the raw brings in the healthy assertion, the it a little less passive, if you will. I don't like the word passive. A little uh, not as meditative in a way. Yeah. Well, although some chants are quite active for sure. So, so I'll demonstrate it. You can see why the fellow was laughing. You're laughing.
Well, I actually, but it's exciting because you really are
Yeah,
using
yeah,
all the faith. We do this
yeah,
in Continuum all the time. These are where, we do intersect and,
yeah.
wise people start
Yeah,
getting downloads like
yes,
Peter and
yeah,
Emily and,
yeah, yes,
so
yes,
of
and you,
course.
right? Well, I think that people will say to me, "Well, what about this method and that method?" And I'll say, "Well, first of all, who?" I said, "No, not what. Who? Who are you going to be guided by or work with? Because it 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 makes a difference." And then from that, who are you attracted to and what system? And if it's in, like you say, in this integrative container, then there's things to learn from so many. I know you've studied so many systems. Oh my gosh. And and you bring all of that, even though your primary work is continuum so broad that you don't have to leave any of the things you've studied behind, right? And that's an indication that all of them had some gift to bring it to this point, right?
Well, I don't know why I bring this up, but I remember being really worried about 20 years ago, I guess, maybe even, well, I know it was about 20 years ago,
Yeah.
that my brother and I loved my brother very much, and we really were catalysts for each
Yep.
other. And he was saying, "You keep studying all these different things. You're being jack of all trades, master of none."
Yep.
I was going, "No, that's not," because he was very
Yep.
focused. He was on the spectrum, and he just went for it. But I've always done that, and I remember I had to take it to my therapist, and he says, "Well, those are fairy rings around you."
Oh, how
And it was such
lovely.
a, you know,
Oh my
so
gosh.
yes, I love Tai Chi. I love Continuum. I
Yes,
love
yes.
research. I love, I mean, I'm doing an in depth study with my friend Bessel Vanderkolk on trauma because even though that's my, was my emphasis in getting my graduate degree, I think trauma, and that's something I want to talk to you. I think trauma is one of our main problems in
Oh,
today.
yes.
I mean, you can
Absolutely.
label it PTSD, but PTSD is not just for military. It's
Yeah.
it's probably what's going on with the whole Black Lives Matter and the police.
Yes.
We know
Yes.
firemen have it. We
Yeah.
know abused children and women
Hmm.
and men. I mean, so it's so prevalent, and I think. Well, I was a child of the 60s, and I
Mm.
really do. I still to this day believe that we can come to peace on earth, and I am a peacenik, and so what would be the means to reach it? And I do think it is some of the somatic practices.
Mm.
You just going to somebody and talking to them never worked for me. Going
Yeah.
to you, Ian, and
Yeah.
where you bring in the somatics, and
Yeah.
also you bring in all this, um, oh gosh, I don't know how to describe it except for there is just this whole acceptance and love in
Mm.
you that
Yeah.
comes across that makes me feel so safe,
Oh.
that
Mm.
it's so dear, it's
Yeah.
so dear,
Yeah. Thank you.
and healing really occurs in
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah. It's and resonance. Because I
yes,
noticed just listening to you that the timbre and resonance of my own voice, right, changed listening to you. And here we are. You're in Florida. I'm in British Columbia, right? And there's that connection that isn't about time and space. And that's what I think has happened in the world. We have lost to a too large extent this capacity to resonate. William Reich, who was one of my original um, mentors, although I didn't meet him, I met his daughter, but not him himself. He talked about that if we were really connected in a resonant way with our true nature, um, we would never kill another person. We would not have rape. We wouldn't have violence because we couldn't do it. And I I remember reading that and I thought, how true, how true. And I remember when I was first studying Reiki and vegetotherapy with uh, Peter Levine at the time was teaching me, and he was my therapist in those probably 1971. And there was a book of William Reich's there, and I think this speaks so much to your work. And so I picked it up, and Peter came along, and he said to me, "I'd rather you don't read the book now." I said, "Well, you're my therapist. You don't want me to read the book. I won't read the book." And I didn't understand why he said that. So 4 years later, I read the book, but I didn't. Then I could understand the book in a way. I didn't get the cognitive, for me, to get the cognitive filter first. I got the organic one that actually helped me understand in a depth way what he was talking about, right? And I thought that was such a organic, bottom up, visceral, cellular movement, spirited, I don't know, a whole thing that transformed for me. And Peter knew, that I was going to lose a gift if I tried to do top down. Now I have clients that they can't do much bottom up unless they have a cognitive map. So then it's about resonating to where a client is and helping them get enough of a cognitive map that you can do a weave between what's emerging in the body and the putting the cognitive map together to feel safe.
I want to share with you. You might really like this. Don Henlon Johnson, who I believe you
Mm-hmm.
know too, and I just adore him. He's
Yeah.
such a dear person, and he really deeply appreciated Continuum
Mm.
and Emily. And he, in one of the videos that we had made with him, said this most wonderful thing that, sometimes when you hear something that's just such a aha. So he
Mm-hmm.
was talking about Reich, because I too studied a lot of
Mm-hmm.
Reich and read
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the books and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was saying that he thought Emily actually was the real breakthrough of what Reich was actually talking about,
Wow.
because Reich sort of put it a little bit too much, the what is it, the anatomy of the orgasm, or
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it had more of a sexual connotation, where
Mm-hmm.
Emily puts it right into the body, into the
Mm-hmm.
fluid streaming, instead of orgasmic streaming. It's it tied
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
orgasmic thing.
Yeah.
It's our body's birthright to have this streaming that flows through it, that really is
Yes.
pure ecstasy. and
Yeah.
and it doesn't take another
Yeah, that's right.
so I was really touched by that, and I thought I would share that with you. And
No, it's lovely.
uh, isn't it?
And it reminds me that I haven't really researched this, but you might know yourself, um, that um, Reich actually was kind of initiated by a woman who was a dancer. And I wondered if you'd ever heard that story or knew anything about it.
Well, I haven't heard it, but it makes sense.
Well, I noticed how happy you got.
Well, there, it can, uh, there is just something about the fluidity and dance and movement. I mean, dance has been held sacred all over
Yes,
the
yes,
universe. All
yes.
over the universe. Actually, I'm not all over the all over the globe is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah,
Implied that I visited
yeah,
other
yeah.
places in the universe. Well, maybe I do, but I'm not.
Yes, that's right.
But
Right.
African dancing and drumming.
Yes, yes,
How
yeah,
sacred and wonderful is that? And or Sufi, or Tai
yeah,
Chi. I mean, we could just go on. It all has this movement
yeah,
and breath sound components. So
yeah.
my research, I am so I have a research project going at University of North Florida right now, and I can't wait to do even more. That I
Oh,
just
oh,
think
wonderful.
this is the
Great.
way, this is
That's
my
great.
answer to changing the world into a
Yeah,
loving
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
peaceful
yeah,
way. So
yeah. Well, a couple of things came up as I was hearing you, and this is I'm so excited about because you've talked about this research that you're going to go forward with this, Donnalea. Um, because so a couple of things came up. One was uh, how so many indigenous groups use sound, dance, ritual, and community to help work through um, things that we would call PTSD or even high stress trauma, right? That maybe doesn't get the category of PTSD exactly, but so many people are running in their nervous system, as you know, maybe not PTSD, but we have a society that's either kind of resigned, there's not enough connection to life force, or it's a rigid, and those polarities, and of course the rigidity has a very hard time really embodying the heart and the feeling and the fluidity of the movement, and the more resigned, uh, sort of depleted, if you will, um, doesn't have enough impulse. And I think of your work as as very gently bringing one up and the other one to soften, to find this central embodied expansion that connects body, mind, and spirit viscerally, organically, and connected to everything that is without dissociating, by being able so connected to the body that it's you're present and it's all one thing.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at the time going, boo hoo, we're running out of time and everything. But
Yeah.
we could do more, Ian, and everything, because I think dialoguing is so important. And especially with colleagues that, I mean,
Mm,
because you just, you how would I put it? You well, actually, you excite me about to really. Oh my gosh, yes,
uh,
and if that's true, then this could be true, and
yeah.
it just is
Uh,
such a really positive life force.
yeah. Well, Donnalea, one of the things I always come away from talking with you feeling seriously inspired, because you have a a quality of joy and delight that radiates, and it's generous, just intrinsically. And I think that's one of the gifts, you bring to the work, right? And you were speaking about this capacity to feel safe and good heart, as the Dalai Lama says, um, eh, and 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 I always feel that from you, even no matter what you're talking about. There's this movement in you about it until you find the inspiration, right? Which I always think of that as a continuum, or the primacy of movement. You know, yeah. So thank you very much.
Well, the honor is all mine,
Yeah,
and I would say it takes one to know one.
you're always very good at doing that. Just what you
It's
did, giving. Yeah, thank
Well,
you.
it's when I feel safe and when you're
Mm,
in the presence of loving, caring, kind people,
yeah,
it's a different world, and
that's no, that's true.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
true. Fundamentally, thank you.
uh,
That's a lovely place to transition.
yes.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yes.
More to be continued.
To be continued. Yes. Yes.
Bye.
Goodbye.